Hi, I'm Fran Strachan and today I'm chatting with Dr. Anne Brewster. And you've been the regional chair of the Commonwealth Writers Prize for the last 2 years. It's one of the largest literary prizes. It seems like every day at the moment we turn around and there's another literary prize on the market. You've said that the Commonwealth Writers Prize is far more democratic. Why is that?
It's democratic because the judging process happens throughout the whole of the Commonwealth. If you compare it to something like the Miles Franklin, this is a prize that is just for Australian writers, or the Man Booker Award is just for books that are published in the UK. So the Commonwealth Prize looks at books published throughout the Commonwealth, from the Caribbean to Africa, India, Australia.
And getting back to this idea of competition culture, Geordie Williamson, the literary critic, has said that this prize culture means that writing's no longer just about the business of writing and getting your books funded. It's also starting to control the content of books. Do you think that we're getting to a point where writers are just, it's sort of almost like a sausage factory and they're turning out a kind of generic style of writing?
Well, no, I think I have to disagree with Geordie there. I think that, personally, I think that competitions are fantastic because they provide an extra source of funding for writers. And let's face it, I mean, most writers don't earn big bucks. Even big selling, or even the best-selling writers in Australia are still selling to a relatively small audience. So I'm certainly all for literary competitions. And I think the Commonwealth Prize also brings people together from across the world. It brings the judges and the writers together, and it brings those writers to different audiences. So I think that this kind of competition is very special for that reason.
And getting back to Australian writers, there was an Australian writer who won one of the categories in this year's Commonwealth Prize. Can you tell us a bit about her?
Her name is Glenda Guest, and she was the winner in the Australian and Southeast Asian and Pacific region. She was the winner for the best first book. It's a book called Sid and Rock, and it is set in Western Australia. She's a Western Australian writer. So it won the regional award for the best first book in this region, and then she went into competition with the other 3 first books from the other major world regions, and she won. So she was absolutely stunned because she was 60. It was her first book. We had no idea of that. Well, we had no idea that she was 60 when we awarded the prize to her. But it was just really special that it went to somebody who had done a creative writing degree 20 years ago and had been working on this book for a long time. So that was a really special story, and it's a fantastic story.
And another research area of yours is Indigenous writers. And you've mentioned that they help rethink Australian history. How do authors like Sally Morgan help us?
Well, I think Sally Morgan's book, it's a good example, was a very important book because it was published in the mid-80s, and it was
This is My Place?
Yes, Sally Morgan's book, My Place, published by Fremantle Arts Centre Press. And this was a very important book because it was one of the first books that actually broke the silence on the removal of children, of Aboriginal children from their families, which had been going on for 3, sometimes more generations. So Aboriginal literature can bring us the other side of the story of colonisation and the settlement of the country, the modernisation, the development of the agricultural industry. These are things that Aboriginal people played a part in. So when these books get into general circulation, like Sally Morgan's book did, which was an enormous bestseller, it actually educates people. It actually shows them something different about the nation, and I think it makes people think differently about themselves, and we can see that change does come about.
What do you think the future is for books?
I do think there are times when electronic media will be very handy, A friend of mine has just bought one of those Kindles.
Yeah.
She says she just wants to be able to, sometimes on a Friday night she thinks, oh, I want to read a crime novel. And so she wants to be able to just download something that she feels like reading at that moment. But as for me, I look at a computer screen for so many hours of the day that actually I want to get away from one. And I just prefer turning the pages, and I really like writing in books. In fact, there I've opened a page which has some pencil notations. So I think that the book will be with us forever. I don't know. I just hope it's not going to become too expensive.
Thanks for your time today, Anne. It's been lovely talking to you.
Thanks, Fran.